Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
What led you to write Are You an Illusion in the first place?
Exasperation with the doctrine going around for some time, largely from scientists, but also I'm afraid from some philosophers, that the self is an illusion, that you aren't really there. As Crick said, your joys and sorrows, your ambitions and memories and so on are just a lot of cells in your mind. Well, now, the trouble with this sort of talk, it does seem to me very serious, that it distracts people from thinking about their own lives in the direct way that they can from the data that they themselves are getting. It tells them, no, what you really need is some physical science or other. In the present, it's these nerve cells. This distraction, this notion that science ahead of everything else will solve all your problems, what one calls scientism, has been on the increase for a long time, and I think it takes the place which perhaps some sorts of theology used to take, getting in the way of people thinking about what is directly around them and they should be thinking about.
In the book you say something that flies in the face of current orthodoxy needs to be stated clearly. You say minds can affect brains as well as brains affecting minds. Can you explain for us how that happens?
Yeah, I would be happy to start by doing that by talking about London taxi drivers. You know, some experiments done some years ago when the taxi drivers really did have to learn the whole of London by heart, found that their hippocampi were bigger than other people's. Well, you see, hippocampi are what we remember with. And it's a good test because the names of streets don't mean anything, so it's pure memory. And it emerged that these people, by learning this sort of stuff, were permanently affecting their brain cells. You see, the thing that's so hard to get the hang of here, I think, is that when we think one thing is happening, but we perceive it in two ways. We perceive it directly in consciousness, but it can also be perceived by people measuring the cells. The cells are doing something when we think. And these aren't two separate things. It's part of it really is the one thing. And the doctrine that matter affects mind and mind can't affect matter has been really very strong in our culture for the last more than a century. So that it makes us very hard to understand. And you see, not only the taxi drivers, but there is a lot of what they call biofeedbacks can be discovered. If I read New Scientist, I often come across some gadget or other which people are going to be controlling by thinking. They can control their blood pressure, you see, looking at a little graph to see where it's going. They can make their blood pressure go down. Well, this isn't the sort of thing which ought to happen according to the ideas which I'm largely brought up on, but it does.
I wanted to ask whether you think that this idea of an illusory self has gained a following wind from the popular superstition that we are lumbering robots controlled mind and body by our genes.
Well, you see, yes, because that line of propaganda certainly suggested that what we think of as ourselves, our joys and sorrows and so on, doesn't have any effect. It's all being done by the genes. The genes, that was about 40 years ago, wasn't it? Now it's much more the brain cells. But the story has the same bad effect, that people who have got to take decisions and think about how they're going to live are being told it won't make any difference, really. It's all just froth on the top. This is whatever. It's fatalism, you see, fatalism of a rather new kind. Fatalism used to involve saying there's something called fate, which is after you, but now it involves saying there are various gadgets inside you which are taking charge, and rather mysteriously, they become active selves. you yourself cease to be one. And we thought the point of that was to say that nobody could be an active self, but somehow these little things pop up as substitute subjects.
I see how it leads to a certain sort of fatalism, and I want to know whether the following example is on which side of the fence it is, whether it's on the side of minds affecting brains, or whether it's a fatalism. I noticed that in nominally progressive publications, particularly in the United States, such as, say, Mother Jones, there's been a rash of articles kind of celebrating studies that purport to have discovered that Republicans and Democrats have got different sorts of brains. There's a sort of if you've got an MRI scan, you can see there's a left-leaning amygdala